Unknown facts about Roe versus Wade. 1. Roe versus Wade wasn't about Roe at all. The case's official name refers to Jane Roe, the pseudonym used for the woman who brought the case. However, Roe was actually the defendant, not the plaintiff. Roe, Norma McCorvey, was an unmarried woman who sought an abortion, but she never actually had the procedure. During the case, McCorvey was pregnant and wanted to end the pregnancy, but was unable to access an abortion due to Texas restrictive abortion laws. By the time the case reached the Supreme Court, McCorvey had already given birth and put the baby up for adoption. 2. Roe never actually got an abortion. Despite the case being about her right to have an abortion, Norma McCorvey never had an abortion. She gave birth to the child and put it up for adoption. McCorvey later became an anti-abortion activist, which is an ironic twist given her pivotal role in legalizing abortion. 3. The case was decided by a 7-2 majority. In the landmark decision of Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court ruled by a 7-2 majority in favor of the right to choose an abortion. The opinion, written by Justice Harry Blackmun, concluded that the right to privacy, implied by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, extended to a woman's decision to have an abortion. This ruling effectively legalized abortion nationwide, striking down many state laws that severely restricted abortion access. 4. The case was rooted in privacy rights, not women's rights. While Roe versus Wade is often considered a victory for women's rights, the case was actually framed around the right to privacy rather than a specific constitutional guarantee of gender equality. The Supreme Court's decision was based on the argument that a woman's right to choose an abortion fell under the broader constitutional right to privacy, which was derived from the Bill of Rights and the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. 5. The case was argued by an unknown lawyer. The lawyer who argued Roe versus Wade before the Supreme Court, Sarah Weddington, was just 26 years old at the time. She had recently graduated from law school and had very little experience in arguing cases before the highest court. Weddington's success in Roe versus Wade made her one of the youngest attorneys ever to win a case before the Supreme Court, and it significantly propelled her career in law and politics. 6. Roe v. Wade's ruling was not a complete legalization of abortion. While Roe versus Wade legalized abortion in the United States, the decision was not an absolute or unrestricted right. The ruling allowed states to regulate abortions, particularly in the later stages of pregnancy. The court established a trimester framework, which allowed states to impose increasing restrictions on abortion as the pregnancy progressed, with the right to abortion being strongest in the first trimester and weakest in the third trimester. 7. Justice Blackmun's personal history played a role. Justice Harry Blackmun, who wrote the majority opinion in Roe versus Wade, was personally influenced by his experiences as a medical professional before becoming a judge. Blackmun had worked as a law clerk for Chief Justice Warren Burger, who had previously worked as a surgeon. In the Roe versus Wade case, Blackmun took special care to address the medical and scientific aspects of abortion, reflecting his previous work in public health law. 8. The court originally considered the case on narrow grounds. Initially, the Supreme Court was poised to hear the case on much narrower grounds. They were considering whether Texas abortion laws were so restrictive that they violated the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. However, the case evolved during oral arguments, and the court ultimately ruled more broadly on a woman's right to choose abortion as part of the right to privacy. 9. Roe versus Wade was influenced by other landmark cases. The decision in Roe versus Wade was shaped by earlier landmark cases, especially Griswold versus Connecticut, 1965, which established a right to privacy in the context of birth control. Griswold set the stage for Roe, with the court interpreting that a constitutional right to privacy extended to personal reproductive decisions. In a similar vein, the court relied on prior rulings on personal liberty and autonomy in its decision-making. 10. The ruling sparked an ongoing political divide. The Roe versus Wade decision sparked a fierce and lasting political divide in the United States. While the ruling was hailed as a victory for reproductive rights and women's autonomy, it also ignited a powerful pro-life movement that has been working to overturn or limit the decision ever since. Political candidates, courts, and legislators continue to fight over the right to abortion, with numerous attempts to restrict access to abortion or to introduce legislation that could potentially undo Roe's protections. The debate around Roe versus Wade has been central to American politics for over 4 decades, leading to significant Supreme Court rulings and the shaping of both the conservative and liberal agendas. Conclusion: Roe v. Wade was a landmark decision in American legal history, but the complexities and nuances of the case are often overlooked. From the fact that Norma McCorvey never actually had an abortion, to the way in which the case was rooted in the right to privacy rather than women's equality, Roe v. Wade had far-reaching implications that extended beyond the immediate effects of legalizing abortion. This case not only changed the landscape of reproductive rights in America, but also set the stage for decades of political and legal battles over abortion, privacy, and women's rights.